The Oathbreaker Paladin, Baldur 3's version of a Death Knight. Or is it? The undead you summon with this subclass are really weak. If you really want that Necromancer Death Knight theme, I suggest you go a different path. What if you instead multi-class the Oathbreaker Paladin with the Wizard Necromancer subclass instead? Not only will you gain access of being a Paladin with Divine Smites, you'll have higher spell slots so you can upcast it for even more damage. The undead you summon will be higher in number, do more damage, have more HP, not to mention you gain access to spells you normally wouldn't be able to cast otherwise. Hi, I'm Ronan, and welcome to the channel. I cleared Honor Mode first try a little bit ago, and now I'm on a quest to clear it solo with every Origin character. My Dark Urge run ended prematurely, mainly due to overconfidence on my end, and a little impatience when it came to not letting a certain rude goblin survive during a dialogue check. Though I will return to this Dark Urge run at a later time, I'm now moving on to the next character, everyone's favorite devil, Karlach. Normally, Karlach is a good character and will leave your party if you decide to do evil deeds. This is true if she's merely a party member. What if instead you play her as the Origin character? This will give you access to force Karlach to not only do evil deeds like siding with the goblins and raiding the Druid's Grove, but will give you a really unique playthrough you may not otherwise have seen before. This is my intended solo Honor Mode build for what is normally a good character now gone bad, the Oathbreaker Necromancer, aka the Death Knight Karlach. If you're new here, like and subscribe and comment on what you want to see next. Although I did have a recent poll to see what my viewers wanted to see for my Karlach build, I do think that the Oathbreaker Paladin theme fits it a little better for being a fallen hero from Grace. But don't worry, I will use those results for another character in the future, and if you do want to see me attempt this live, I usually stream on Fridays. Before we continue, shout out to Suicide Squash, thank you for being a member of my channel. If you want shoutouts like they have, some other additional perks and early access to videos like this, then hit join down below. The concept of this build is to essentially be a paladin that turns into Necromancer once you get to Act 2/Act 3, depending on how you want to multi-class. My starting stats are on screen. I decided to go Dexterity over top of Strength for this build, mainly because of gear that I'll utilize in Act 3, and because I wanted higher AC along with higher initiative, since going first solo in Honor Mode is definitely something you want to do. Of course, if you wanted to go Strength, you definitely have that option, but do keep in mind you will have to sacrifice Dexterity to do that, and by doing so, you sacrifice Initiative, but that can be made up for with feats like Alert later on if you do choose to do that. On screen now are two different set of stats. To the left are the stats that I started out with, skill proficiency up to you. To the right are my respec stats after you get the necklace in Act 3 to give you 23 constitution base. That way you can put points elsewhere as needed. Skill proficiency up to you. And those that are worried about breaking your oath again, you can easily do it in Act 3 by murdering one of the pedestrians in Rivington. They always respawn after a long rest, and all you gotta do is murder and Misty Step away and you're good to go. The two feats you will utilize for this build will be ASI to get your dexterity to 20, assuming you utilize the Hag's Hair. If you don't utilize the Hag's Hair, the second feat will have to be ASI again, or another dexterity increasing feat. My other recommended feat is going to be Savage Attacker. That way you can reroll all your melee attacks, and it will reroll Divine Smite damage as well, making sure you do max damage pretty much at all times. Of course, as a paladin, you do get a fighting style. I'm sure most people think you're going to be going great weapon fighting, but this build actually utilizes sword and board since most of your damage in Act 1 and 2 is from Divine Smite anyhow. The extra AC from the shield is very useful, and when you do get to Act 3 from gear, you end up doing phenomenal damage regardless, despite using a one-hander. What really makes this build shine is that level 6 Necromancer, you actually have additional undead and additional damage. So the undead you have, not only will they get damage equal to your proficiency bonus, but they actually have additional HP equal to your wizard level, and you can animate additional undead. Now let's talk about the undead you can summon. So you could summon skeletons, zombies, or ghouls. In my opinion, the skeleton is going to be the best bang for your buck, especially in Act 3. I will talk about why in a second, but I do want to showcase, if you go to Animate, If I use a rank 3 spell slot here, I can get 2 at once because you are a Necromancer subclass. If I upcast it to rank 4, however, I can get 4 of them at once, which is huge. And because their bows do piercing damage, in Act 3 when you do unlock the Bolus armor, anyone they attack that is in range of your main avatar, they will do double damage. The Necromancer bonuses also affect the summons that you have from Necromancy of Thagul's as well. Before we move on, I do want to address Aura of Hate and Aura of Protection. In order to gain both of these, you would either need to be level 7 in Oathbreaker Paladin to get the exclusive Aura of Hate, and all Paladins at level 6 get Aura of Protection. Aura of Protection may be worth trading 1 level in War Priest for if you feel like you need the extra saving throws, but you will miss out on Sanctuary and a lot of extra damage from the War Priest charges, so that's going to be up to you if you want to sacrifice that. Aura of Hate, however, I do not think is worth getting at all, because you do have to use 7 levels in Paladin to get this. Not only will you miss out on the Necromancer bonuses to the undead that you summon, but the aura itself isn't that strong. It gives you additional damage equal to your charisma modifier, and it does say it will affect nearby fiends and undead, but that's only undead and fiends that actually have weapons equipped that are melee. So your skeleton rangers that shoot arrows are not affected by this. Your ghouls and zombies you could potentially summon as well also are not going to be affected. So in the early stages of the game, you are going to be playing essentially as a paladin that's going to be debuffing the enemies, but because you do multi-class into War Priest and Wizard, you do have options for additional spells as well, and we'll talk about spells shortly after we do gearing. Don't worry, even though you don't actually get your big summons until usually Act 3 with this build, you can still utilize Animate Dead because you can learn it with a scroll when you multi-class into Wizard at level 1 Wizard. Now, of course, the gear I am talking about is none other than the Radiating Orb Reverberation combo. So most of this stuff is in Act 1, but some of it does come from Act 2. So you do have the Holy Lance Helm, so enemies when they miss you have to make a dex saving throw or they take radiant damage. You have the Cloak of Protection, extra AC and saving throws. The Luminous Armor, very strong because you are a melee paladin. When you do your Divine Smites, this sends out a big shockwave, therefore doing really awesome radiating orbs against the enemy, which just makes sure they can't hit you, and is really nice for Act 2 when it comes to fighting all those undead. The Luminous Gloves you get from Act 2 just gives even more radiating orbs, which does stack to 10 at the max, so -10 to the enemy's attack roll. But you can also use the Glove of Belligerent Skies if you would rather have Reverberation instead. You have the Boots of Stormy Clamor for the Reverberation boots, or in my opinion, another solid pair of boots would be the Nightwalkers for a free Misty Step, and you can't fall on grease or ice. If you combine that with the Snowburst Ring that you get inside Act 2 from the inn, and if you have the Drakethroat Glaive to give yourself cold damage on your weapon, you can create ice fields on the ground when you attack, which is also very strong and makes enemies fall prone. Other options are the Callous Glow Ring in combination with the Corsication Ring, giving you just all kinds of damage, radiating orb debuffs, and everything else in between. Add in the Adamantine Shield so you can never be crit, and enemies that miss their attacks will be sent reeling. Yours is going to be a CC machine that also has really good damage. Weapon wise, of course, the go-to at the very beginning will be the Eluve, because this is a versatile finesse longsword, making it very useful for this build, but you can also utilize the Knife of the Undermountain King as well. And once you do get to Act 3, obviously you're going to want to utilize the Amulet of Greater Health, and don't worry, you can steal this from Raphael's place really early in Act 3 without doing any combat for the most part, which is very strong. And you don't even need to fight Raphael to get this. You can easily steal it and then come back to fight him at a later time, giving you all that extra HP. We're going to be utilizing, of course, the Bolus Armor. We are an evil playthrough, and this is what gives you that super damage. Making enemies vulnerable to piercing damage is insane, so weapons that do piercing damage will have their attacks be doubled. So your Knife of the Undermountain King that we talked about earlier, this will have double damage when you go to utilize it once you get this armor. Of course, when you finally do kill Orin and you get the Crimson Mischief, this weapon is incredibly strong and it's the go-to burst weapon that you want for Act 3, so I'd recommend you get this as soon as possible. Because this does a lot of piercing damage, everything here with the bolus armor is going to be doubled. And the reason it's going to be doubled and have additional effects is because of the rings we utilize as well. I'm using the Ring of Free Action, so I can't be paralyzed or restrained. This is important because I am using the Risky Ring from Act 2 to give myself advantage on my attack rolls, but this does give me disadvantage on saving throws, so chances of me getting put in hold person is pretty high. But because of the Ring of Free Action, I can't be restrained, so it will completely nullify hold person, which is very, very useful. Because we have advantage on all of our attacks, our crit chance is really high, and if you read the Crimson Mischief, when you have advantage, you do additional 7 piercing damage. That gets doubled. The additional 1d6 plus 9 gets doubled. The plus 2 for the dueling fighting style gets doubled. And the additional 1d4 damage when you attack an enemy with 50% HP or less also will get doubled, assuming enemies are vulnerable to piercing damage. The helm I'm using, of course, would be the Saravox Horned Helm, extra crit, fantastic, and you can't be frightened. Cloak is the Cloak of Displacement now, that way enemies have disadvantage on attack rolls against you. So despite not having all the radiating orb stacking like you had in Acts 1 and 2, you are still very tanky because you do have decent AC with this build, and enemies have disadvantage on their attack rolls, so they're probably going to miss anyway. We will be utilizing the Martial Gloves here, because this gives you action surge without actually being a fighter. The only downside is if you read, you do take damage to yourself to use it, and it's only once per short rest. So if you already utilize this and you have another fight coming on and you don't have any short rest, you may want to utilize another set of gloves instead. The boots are going to be whatever you want. I still like using the Nightwalkers simply because they are very, very strong, but you can replace this with whatever you want in its stead. And that's basically gearing, so let's go ahead and move over to spells. Of course, the shield is the Adamantine Shield, and the bows are all for utility. You do have high dex with this build, so you could also utilize the bows for damage as well. So for spells, I do want to go over a few things here, because depending on how you have your final level, whether you went War Cleric, whether you went Warlock, or something else in between, you may have different spells that you can utilize. Of course, for maximum damage, I do think War Cleric is the way to go. Paladin here, your spells realistically that you want to prepare are going to be situational. Early on, things like Bless are very useful. Thunderous Smite, Compelled Duel, and like Wrathful Smite, they're all situational uses. Magic Weapon can be situational. So really, your spells here, use how you see fit. I do want to give a shout out to Protection from Good and Evil. This thing is very, very powerful since majority of the enemies you fight in certain bosses are going to be considered apparitions, celestials, elementals, fae, fiends, and undead, especially in Act 2. So having this is fantastic. Basically makes sure enemies will not hit you since they'll have disadvantage, and you can't be charmed or frightened, which is very useful for some endgame bosses when you fight. But going over some of the other things, so Divine Smite, you can see I can go all the way up to rank 5. Technically, that's not true. Divine Smite only scales up to rank 4 spell slots, so if you use it for a rank 5, the damage will only go up to rank 4, so you're better off using this rank 5 spell slot for something else. Now, of course, you do have your Oathbreaker, like, exclusive things, Dreadful Aspect, fantastic, Channel Oath Charge. You have your Control Undead for Act 2, which is very powerful. Spiteful Suffering, although I do wish this was a bonus action, this is still very useful regardless. And of course you have Divine Sense and Lay on Hands as needed. Your always prepared spells will be Darkness. Keep in mind without the Darkness immunity ring, this will affect you as well, but is very useful against any type of rangers. Crown of Madness, Inflict Wounds, and Hellish Rebuke. Now for Cleric, the main reason I go War Cleric is to get the War Priest extra attack pretty early on, since you don't unlock your extra attack for Paladin until level 5. So getting this early on just helps out for getting extra attacks in at the start of the game. Plus Sanctuary is such a huge lifesaver. Because you are solo, having this is a lifesaver without a doubt. Other spells that I would utilize are like Healing Word and other utility based spells. But now when it comes to the wizard for the most part, all the spells I utilize, because we have such low intelligence, are all utility based spells. So for example, that's going to be things like Longstrider, must have on your bars. Shield, another fantastic spell, giving you +5 AC. It's a reaction, only 1 level spell slot to use it. Another must have spell. I think Magic Missiles, this is very, very powerful, especially because you don't need any type of ability modifier for this since it never misses. Another really fantastic spell to have. I think Counterspell, when you get that, is really good. And of course, having Misty Step, that way you don't have to rely on equipment to utilize, is also very powerful. But you notice there's other spells here that you may want to utilize, like Enlarge, which is very strong. You have things like Mirror Image, Haste. But what if you wanted those as well? I'm going to show you a trick when it comes to equipment. Using the Warped Headband of Intellect, I'm going to put this on. This will give my intelligence to 17. Now when I go to my spellbook, this will give me 4 more spell slots, not spell slots, but like spells I can prepare. So I'm going to add Invisibility, Mirror Image, Enlarge, and then for the last one, feel free to use whatever. Let's go with like Enhanced Sleep, for example. Now you can see they're on my bars, good to go, and I can use them. So now if you want to use something else, like for example in Act 3 to crit Helm, I can replace it. If you take a look at my spells, all those spells I added are still there. But if you go to your wizard spell book, it only shows some of them are prepared, but you can see all the ones that actually are highlighted. So you can still prepare all of these spells regardless. Another fantastic thing about wizard is the fact that you can learn spells from actual scrolls like the throne here. So I can give myself this 5th level spell slot. The only thing is, these spells that you utilize with the scrolls, all of these spells use your intelligence modifier for attack rolls or spell save DCs for the most part, so do keep that in mind. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about your Illithid Powers. Obviously, if you want to get the outer powers, you'll have to take the special one. If you don't, since that does mess up your face, the other powers you want to utilize are the go-tos, Ability Drain, Luck of the Far Realms, and of course, Call of the Week. Before we go to the combat showcase, I do want to say, make sure your divine smites and everything else are all set up properly inside your reactions. That way you don't waste spell slots when you don't need it. And I'm just going to open up on him and hopefully get a good sneak attack in. Alright, so he's at 36 HP. I'm going to go ahead and just use a rank 4 and he's gone. We're going to attack this enemy next. Oh, I crit her. She died. Didn't even need to use my Divine Smite. So let's go ahead to this enemy instead. I also crit. And I think they died, actually. I don't even need to use Divine Smite since they died from Call of the Week. So let's attack this one next instead. Also crit, also dead, so also don't need to waste anything else. And I can use my other attack to then attack this enemy up here, and guess what? He's probably gonna die. And no, it's just for fun. We'll hit him with a big crit right there as well. Now I'm going to come all the way up here to this archer and end my turn right next to him. And the reason I did that is because I do want to showcase the ranged attack here. Because I'm out of my normal range, let's have the skeleton move up. I'm going to make sure I don't touch the ice though. And when I attack this target, he not only is he going to have aura murder, but if I hit him, it's going to do really good damage. And I missed. Of course I did. Alright, let's have this one come up. And let's try it again. Yeah, look at that. Even my little skeleton did 26 damage from one hit. And that's how powerful this build is. When you get to Act 3, you have your little skeletons helping out, doing damage against the enemy, and you just do massive amounts of damage yourself. But that's when you get to Act 3, so what about, like gear and stuff that you utilize from Acts 1 and 2? Alright, so the only thing I didn't change for this second showcase is going to be the Amulet Greater Health, mainly because I don't want to respec again. but you get what I'm talking about here. So I'm now using the Holy Lance Helm, Cloak of Protection, Luminous Armor, Gloves, Stormy Clamor Boots, Kalos Glow Ring combination, and my weapon is now the Knife of the Undermountain King instead. So when I open up, I'm actually going to open up with Magic Missiles here, just because this is a really strong spell regardless. So let's go ahead and open up on the enemy right here that tends to cast a lot. All right, so now that I opened up, I'm going to have a little bit of a limited amount of attacks I can do going in there compared to before, but that's quite all right. So we're going to come up and simply attack the enemies here. And I did use Enlarged Person on myself as well, since you can get that pretty early on depending on how you multi-class. Alright, and then this is when your Divine Smites are going to be really useful here to pack on a lot of damage, as you can see. And I'm going to just auto-crit her here. And she died. Didn't need to use my Divine Smite. And then from the War Priest charge, we'll attack this guy here because he's basically about to die. And you can see, even though I didn't attack him, is all the radiating orbs because of the AoE damage that I did. Or AoE, like radiating blast from the chest piece. And I actually missed. I should have gave myself Bless maybe. Oh well. You get the Risky Ring in Act 2 anyway. Now, I could use Hellish Rebuke to attack him since he did attack me. So let's go ahead and use rank 2 on him. So I did some fire damage. It's considered a spell. And because of that, he took the radiating orb damage as well because of the Kalos Glow Ring and stuff like that. So I'll still go ahead and have my skeleton attack this character here. So he's dead. Good job, skeleton. And this is why I like having the skeletons, because they can just really help out when it comes to getting a little bit of extra chip damage in on your enemies. And remember, if the Bolus armor, all that damage they do would be doubled. And they act as good shields because they're attacking the skeleton instead of attacking me as well, which is kind of hilarious. Alright, and I do of course have the Necromancy of Fae. If I want to use the Dance Macabre, I totally can. So let's go ahead and summon them, although you don't get those until Act 3 anyway. But you know, even more undead to help out, so why not? And now that it's my turn again, I have the option. Do I want to try to, like, you know, make people afraid, which is very useful in the right, like, circumstances and things like that? Or do I just want to continue to attack? I say we continue to attack. Nope, he died. Didn't even need to, you know, use my Divine Smite. And that's basically the build. Like early on, you're just an AoE radiating orb machine. Of course, looking at my spell book here, when it comes to the wizard spells, if I have like shield and things like that, I can easily use that as a reaction as long as I still have a reaction to utilize and all that fun stuff in between. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed this build, please like and subscribe. Comment down below what you want to see next. And of course, if you want to see me try to do this solo with my Karlach Evil playthrough, come by on Fridays because that's when I live stream. I'm Ronan. See you next time.